It's great to see you all. I'm really excited to be here to moderate this for your consideration panel. So thanks for inviting me. And as you all know, it's fun for me to see how everyone looks in real life and without the red robes. So I wanted to start with you, Warren. You know, everyone was waiting, including myself, with bated breath for this season. And I'm curious about the challenges that were posed by the pandemic when it came to actually bringing this to fruition.
Well, there were a lot of challenges. First and foremost, we needed to create a safe environment for this cast and our crew. Otherwise, we knew they'd leave. They wouldn't stay and work if the environment wasn't safe. So 6 months of planning, hundreds of Zooms, medical consultants that were taking us through all of the precautions we needed to follow, a 40-page protocol document that we needed to execute, millions of dollars, and I think uniquely, year 4 of Handmaid's Tale, we were nomadic in our storytelling. So we couldn't go to one stage, create a bubble, and just say, that's it. That's how we're going to function. Because literally, it's a road show this year. There is no home base. We're out there telling this story. And so that was particularly demanding. When it's all said and done, year 4, over 27,000 COVID tests, 11 positives, and none of those were connected. Those were all individual. So what Bruce and I like to say is, last year, where was the safest place on the planet? If you were working on The Handmaid's Tale.
Bruce, did you have to alter any of the storylines given sort of the restrictions that you were dealing with and the protocols that you had to follow?
Oh, absolutely. I think there was just the practical aspect. The first practical aspect was creating a safe environment, and that really required us to make some choices right at the beginning. I mean, it's a question of how many people you have, how many people you are, the normal amount of people at camera versus a reduced number. But, all of these people on this panel went to Herculean efforts just to get there. For Sam to work one day, it's 2 weeks of quarantine on either side. So he gave us a month to work for 4 hours.
That was
and
very
everybody
nice of
did.
him.
So yes, the story changed, and these guys took on a lot more. They had to fill in scenes that didn't exist emotionally, because we didn't have Zawe Ashton to film the scenes we needed with Samira to lead up to the other scenes, because the math just didn't work out. She couldn't come. So we rewrote a lot, and all of these people were so flexible and found ways to make the story points work, even when we really didn't have the location or beings around that we could use in the set. They really made it come alive. So it was a remarkable year in terms of flexibility, but me being flexible is easy. These guys being flexible is much, much, much harder. So they were amazing.
Elisabeth, I wanted to ask you, and of course, everyone here who had to get in front of the camera, how, you all render such extraordinary performances, each and every one of you, but to be able to do it and to summon the emotion without in a less than linear way, given the kinds of things that you had to do to accommodate, how difficult was that for you all to kind of have to do things herky-jerky and accommodate sort of all the restrictions that came with this pandemic?
I think I kind of echo what Bruce said in that it's my job. I mean, it's our job to figure out how to tell a story in the way that production is asking us to tell it. And we did have, of course, more challenges and more restrictions and more things to think about. But once we established, I think, as a production and as producers, that we were going to be in a safe environment, we were able to communicate that to everybody, to the cast and crew. And it honestly felt like we came together in a closer and stronger and more collaborative way than ever. I think the time apart, the time at home, the time not working and not acting and not getting to do what we love for 6 months, I know at least I can speak for myself, it made me miss it and it made me appreciate it all the much more. And appreciate the familial aspect as well of just being on a set. And I think we as actors actually all kind of became closer friends this year. I got to work with actors that I don't usually get to work with and spend time with them. And I think we just, the crew just kind of banded around us and everyone wanted to be there. And everyone was so grateful to be able to be back at work on something that we're so proud of. So I guess it didn't feel as much of as a challenge or something negative. It felt like a very positive experience.
Lizzie, what about finally getting out of Gilead? Of course, June does against her wishes, but as a viewer, I was grateful because I don't think I would have been able to handle that if you hadn't finally been able to escape. But it was so interesting how you all were able to, I think, deal with June's trauma. And trauma is such an important, I think, theme of this season.
Yeah, I think it was really important to us. I'm glad you are talking about it because it was really important to us to hold on to that pretty tightly. I think there's a version that a show could do that would be very different from what we did in particularly 7, 8, 9, and 10. And it was really, really important for me to be able to accurately portray what that experience would be like for her coming out of what she comes out of, that she's not going to have a perfect relationship with her husband, with her friends, with people who are trying to help her. It's not going to be easy. And she's never going to be the same. And that story was told beautifully in the writing as well. We always just, we end up following these beautiful maps. But it was very, very important to us. And for me personally, it was, the back half of the season was so cool because I got to work with these actors that are all here. I got to work with Sam. I got to reunite with Luke and have all of this incredible material that we had. I had scenes with Samira and Alexis and Amanda, and it was like I had all this new material to play. To speak to your point about, is there more story to tell? I had all this new stuff. I had all these new scenes, these new relationships to explore. It was fantastic.
And OT, I think that people watching really, really felt for you, because I think that trauma affects not only the person who's endured trauma, but of course, the people around that individual, and the feeling of helplessness and confusion and having your partner lose a piece of herself. Talk to us about some of the challenges of playing Luke this season, and all the anticipation, and then all the expectations that aren't met.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it wasn't really that challenging to the extent to which the writing is so good, it's so there, and of course Lizzie is always just so genius that you just kind of like stand opposite her and like try and reflect back some of what you're getting. So like on an artistic level, that's just like the fun of it, But I think from a character level, Luke for 3 years has had this pent up need to be connected to his daughter, connected to his wife, and has been separated. Like you say, happens to a lot of refugee people that are separated from their families. And so it's really challenging for him to get this reunion, but yet they're not yet still connected. And for him to try and bridge that gap and the ways that they fail, I think it was really well written. And so, yeah, it was exciting to do as an actor, but I guess tough for poor Lukey.
I'm a little freaked out to hear you speak, OT. I'm not going to lie.
I love it every time. Every time I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
And Bruce, when I wish that we had some of the writers, because the writing is, every aspect of the show is phenomenal. The cinematography, the acting, of course, but the writing. And did you consult people who are experts on trauma and on kind of what this experience might be like? Or did the writer's room talk to some of those folks?
Absolutely. I mean, we rely on experts a lot. So we certainly brought a ton of people in from the UN. They've been very helpful. The UNHCR has been helpful. The Criminal Court, International Criminal Court has been helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think that the whole point of the show, the whole point of this, if you're going to show trauma, you want to show a specific experience of trauma and recovery from trauma, not a generalized one. And what these guys have done, Samira, Alexis, Amanda, and OT, they've shown you what it's like to recover from trauma in Gilead, out of Gilead into Toronto. They've all had very, very different experiences. And so we've built this skeleton of possible routes, and then you drop June into it, and she has her own specific experience. And I think what we're trying to say is there is no trauma throws a bomb into your life and it explodes and it changes everything. And there's no roadmap that everybody is following. And on our show, we have this extraordinary collection of actors, and we've seen them all go through it. And the message is everybody's journey through this is absolutely different. And some are some seem healthier from the outside, and some seem less healthy from the outside. But everybody's has an individual journey through trauma.
And not only does Luke and this OT's character Luke have to kind of navigate that, but Alexis, you do as well, not only personally, but in terms of your relationship with June, and of course, you know, Moira and Emily are both, I think, kind of conflicted about their relationship with June. And I'm curious, Alexis, why that was so important to show this interplay, to be problematic in many ways, and for your character show how how June had been damaged as well, and the impact it had on her friendships, not simply her marriage.
Yeah, I think in the scene where Moira and Emily talk about June's rescuing all the children and how it left, you know, so much to figure out, and how they both individually had a little bit of anger toward her. It's not really what you expect them to reveal in that moment. They're essentially trying to fill out her, or see her plan through, what kind of do the next step of what she did, placing all the children in homes. But it shows that, you know, it's a very complicated experience, even like supporting one another through their recovery from trauma. It's so multi-layered and different for each person. So as those women interact and try to support each other, all kinds of emotions come up, and it's really messy. And as Moira says, even though, you know, she feels anger toward June, she loves her, you know, and she supports her, and she wants to see her back, and then they do get her back, and that's everything, because it brings up everything in all these women, that to have her back, because each one is triggered in a different way, and it just brings the story to this incredible culmination.
And in fact, these reunion scenes are so moving and gratifying for someone who's been watching this from the very beginning. You know, you're so invested in these characters, and you're so hoping that they will have these reunions. And Samira, was it, you know, it's just packs such an emotional punch. And what was that for you to come back to the character of June, someone that you hadn't seen for so long? And did you all have to get back into an acting groove? Because as Lizzie just said, you all really didn't do much work together for quite a while between seasons.
It was interesting to me, I think, this season to see the parallels between Samira and June's relationship and Samira and Lizzie's relationship. June is so excited. I mean, like, Samira was so excited to read that this was going to happen. And I was so excited, number one, even as a fan, even to think about fans watching the show, to finally see this thing that we have been waiting for so long. But also, Samira, was so excited to be back on screen with Lizzie. I could not wait, because I mean, I remember that very first season, and then those very first episodes I had with Lizzie, and how electric it felt for me, and how fulfilled I felt as an actor to be on screen with someone like Lizzie, and like the things that she brings out, I feel like, in me as an actor, it's really, really, really exciting to be on screen and to have that. It sort of feels like, I feel like Lizzie has said this before, like a tennis match almost. That I feel like I'm just trying to give her the ball back as strong as she gives it to me. But yeah, I'm very, very, very happy that we finally got. It's so satisfying to finally touch her, to not talk about June so much, but to actually have her in front of me was indescribable.
Sam, I'm just curious that, here you become a part of this show that is so established, and you're this brand new character, kind of a psychological mediator, taking it all in. You're a bit of an enigma, I think, throughout. You become less so, I think, as the season goes on. But what was it like just jumping into this group and being a part of what I'm sure felt like a family? And what was it like for you to be a part of this show?
Well, my first job is, as a new cog, is to not break the machine, because it's so well oiled. And, these actors and the writing, it was such an honor this year to be outside of just being with the Waterfords all the time, who have some problems. Say that mildly. And I enjoy watching these actors in every facet as a fan, and to work with them. You just if I'm going to be, I was telling Warren and Amanda, if I'm going to be quarantined anywhere, it's good to be quarantined and to come out of it with a show like The Handmaid's Tale and feel like, well, that was time well spent. If I'm going to be away from my family, I'm glad it's with people as talented as this. So.
And what was it, your character, talk a little bit about the requirements for playing Mark, and for, he had to kind of not reveal very much of himself. And
right.
I have a very, you guys are all actors, so I don't really have even the terminology for this, but a very...
lying. It's called lying.
Okay.
Come on now.
Internalized or internal character. And I'm just curious about what it was like playing this character, who you can tell Serena's getting under his skin a little bit, but you can't really read him totally, at least in many of the episodes.
Yeah, I think one of the mysteries watching the show is, trying to figure out where he stands. And I think where he stands is he's just trying to do what's best for America, for what's left of America. And so unfortunately, that makes him extremely diplomatic. So you can't really quite tell what
he's hard to read.
Yeah, he's hard to read. But if anybody can break somebody down, it's June Osborne. So thankfully, we get, by the end of the season, there's someone who's going to get under his skin.
I think you swear for the first time. Don't you swear?
That's right.
Mark swear for the very first time.
That's right.
Yeah, he gets mad at me. Very impressive.
Mad at June.
And Amanda, of course, Rita, we learn more about Rita. I think she reveals herself throughout the series, but I think we see Rita in a whole new light in this season, and her struggles and her having to straddle these two worlds.
She's a woman of few words, as we've seen, and this is really the first season where there's a substantial amount of dialogue for her. And I've always leaned on her physicality to convey emotion, to convey where she is in any scene. And it was really important bringing that physicality still to Gilead. I did a lot of research on Syrian refugees, and particularly Syrian refugees who've come to Canada, who have fled horrific conditions, but still desperately miss a lot of things about home and still want to dress similarly to home, who want to bring food and senses and smells from home. And so I was really trying to weave that in to this season as well. Still clasped hands, head bowed forward, just her general physicality, simply because just because she was moved from Gilead doesn't mean that Gilead has been moved from her. And only we see a scene with Rita eating sushi purposefully did I start to sort of change her physicality, because I do think that a lot of people who have fled circumstances, who have fled horrific conditions, still carry it with them for quite some time. And I felt it important to pay homage to the writing, to the vision of the story, but also to audience members who may have had similar situations or experiences, to sort of to try to nod to them and tell their truth as much as I could.
I wanted to ask Lizzie about directing, because this season you direct how many episodes?
3.
3. And I'm curious about, I've always been fascinated about an actor who is able to direct herself, himself, themselves. And I'm wondering about the challenges of that and what you learned in the process.
You know, I mean, I've always been an actor who's very aware of the visuals. I've always been an actor who likes to be very aware of what's happening on set. I didn't realize this until I started directing, that I've actually been kind of more of a director than I thought for a long time. I like to know about the other characters. I like to know what they're thinking. I like to know what the actors' thought processes have been. I like to, you know about the costumes and the sets. So I've always kind of been like that. The biggest challenge for me was, I suppose, not having that sounding board of a director to bounce off of. But I did have so many incredible, beautiful, talented sounding boards, with Bruce and with our writers and my DP, Stuart Biddlecombe, and production designer, Elizabeth Williams, and then all of these actors. I never felt alone or unsupported at all. And all the actors that aren't here in this panel. It wasn't as much of, it was difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, for sure, but it wasn't, again, like a negative challenge. It was a very positive challenge. And I felt very supported. It's just not a one-man job. I mean, it's just something you just don't do alone. And whether you're an actor or a producer or whatever you do in this industry, in filmmaking, it's not a one-man band. So it was hard, and a lot of hours and a lot of thinking and a lot of, all of that, a lot of work. But at the same time, it was also probably the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I mean, look at these guys. I mean, the chance to get to talk to them as a director and to offer them a thought and then send them and sit at the monitor and see what they do with that thought is the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. I had a whole new appreciation for what they do, even though I'm an actor. So it was incredibly fulfilling.
I'm just going to go around and ask, what for you, as both actors and people who watch this show, if you do watch yourselves, I don't know, some people are weird like that, but what is it that you think makes it work so well? And Alexis, I'll start with you. Big fan, by the way.
Thanks. Thank you, Katie. So many things. I think everybody really brings their best. So many intelligent, creative, and hardworking professionals. Every cog in the wheel is firing at full blast when they come to set or when they prepare to shoot this. So it's the team that Bruce and Warren and Lizzie have assembled, and the creative tone that you talked about, the beautiful filters and all the colors. I mean, that was a vision right from the start that they all established with Reed Morano, our director of the first 3 episodes, and they've carried that through so beautifully, these amazing shots. I mean, yeah, I love the visuals also, I love them so much. And then the incredible writing, of course. That's our map, as Lizzie said.
Amanda, what would you say when you think about the success of the show?
I it's the thing that I've been the most proud to be a part of, not just because of my love for the book and because I'm a huge fan of the show. It's just to experience being a part of a team, and I mean across the board, craft service, costumes, writing, crew. Everyone wants to up their game every season. And I don't know if it's something that's been contagious. I don't know if it starts from the top down with Lizzie, Warren, and Bruce. But I find that it's the one singular experience I've had where everyone is competing with themselves to be better every season. And usually by season 4, cast can sort of rest on their laurels and get bored or sort of phone it in. But it's something, OT does this a lot. In a scene, he always asks the director like 500 questions all of the time. It's lovely. But it's just always wanting to be better and keep asking questions. And it's so inspiring as an actor that everyone is pushing themselves. And then for myself, I feel in order to be able to run with these people, I'll also have to push myself. So it's affected my work outside of the show, which I love and appreciate.
How about you, Warren?
Well, I think our storytelling journey shows us where the strength of this series is. And as you started this discussion earlier, Katie, it's a journey that's not done. And so I think we as artists and the audience are absolutely attached to that journey. And then the way we execute that is with exquisite beauty, covering harsh ugliness. And that's fascinating to peel back the beauty of our images to understand how flawed this world of Gilead is. And of course, in the world that we live in, particularly over the last 4 years, and it's not over, we know that it mirrors the real world through the themes that Bruce is putting on the pages for these characters and their journey. And so I think that really, really resonates visually and emotionally.
I have to say, I don't get quite the pit in my stomach I did before November of 2020 that I used to watching.
We're all sleeping better, Katie. We all sleep better at night.
No, really, I was always like, yeah. And I don't quite feel that level of intensity anymore. So I'm happy for that. But I think in many ways, the intersection of real life and vision and the rancor that was happening in this country did create the perfect, I think, backdrop for this story, which would have been compelling on its own. But I think it heightened everything you felt watching this story unfold. Samira, how about you? When you think about like, damn, this is a good show and this is why, what do you think?
I'm not, I guess I can speak to what I respond to. And there's something about the camera being so close on an actor's face in this show that really almost, I feel like I'm peering into some of these people's souls. Things that Lizzie or Amanda or Alexis, subtle things with their eyes, a twitch of the upper lip, things like that, have you see, I feel like, deeper into their story and what is going on with that character.
That I think you're right. Like sometimes I watch you all and it's such a so subtle, and yet it tells me so much about what you're feeling. And I guess that's the sign of truly great acting. So Sam, let's go to you.
Well, I think, Katie, you're hitting on something. It's the specificity of the show that is so marvelous. And I was struck, here we are 10 episodes into this 4th season. And I was having a conversation with our costume designer, and that conversation carried over to Joe. And the conversation was about not only what we're doing in the scenes, but how does the story we're telling with Joe's art, how is that to be received by our audience? are we telling the right message? And that the actors and the costume designers and the writers, of course, that we're all still tuned into that after 4 seasons. That's the thing I'm most impressed and moved by on our show, is that we're still trying to figure out, how do we do good? I mean, is what we're doing the right thing?
So it's sort of like the integrity of the story.
That's right.
Really important to you. OT, how about you?
What, is there anything left? No, I'm checking. Well, you know what, for me is, like, I feel like what Bruce has managed to do in the writing team is just create something where, on an interpersonal level, a lot of people relate to the trauma, the relationships, unequal relationships between one and one's boss and one and one's partner, one and one's person who assaults you. But then on a larger level, echoing what Warren was saying, that the themes of what's going on in the world and patriarchy and inequality and regimes which are based on populism and fear. I think a lot of the audience see what's going on in their lives, both in their own homes but also out in the world, and I think that's what great art does. It reflects back to your experience.
Bruce?
I think the writing's great.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think for me, the best thing, especially this season, is to see what a lot of what we do is to try to create space for these people to do their jobs without worrying about. So they're not worrying about, is someone thinking about the story? They're not worried about, is someone making sure that we're not, making a horrible moral choice, all those kind of things. And so this season, by creating a bubble, hopefully allowed them to not be in a COVID world, to exist that way. And it expands to the whole cast and crew, as these guys were saying. I think we're a collection of storytellers, and the more we are that, and the more everybody's encouraged to do that, better off we are. But when I watch the show, I like that it's made with care and respect, that it's made carefully, and it respects the abilities of all the people involved and tries to bring those abilities to the fore. So that's what I like about it, is that you can tell that the craft service people care when you watch the episode.
I know, I wish I could interview everyone involved, because I feel like there's so many critically important people behind the scenes who don't get enough credit. But just know that I speak for, I think, many viewers. We see them in the work you're doing, and we appreciate everything that goes into every scene. At least I do, and I think a lot of other people do. And let's end with you, Lizzie. I told Lizzie before we started that there's been a lot of Elisabeth Moss in our home, because my husband had never seen Mad Men. So we've been watching all of Mad Men and all of Handmaid's Tale. So I feel very comfortable looking at you right now. You're in our bedroom every night. So, but when you think about what makes this series work so beautifully, and you've been so fortunate to be a part of it, what comes to mind for you?
It's kind of what Amanda was and Bruce was saying. I feel like, what you see, what you end up seeing in the episodes looks, polished, and we've made decisions, and it's specific, and that's it. You see that hour of television. And I think what people obviously don't see and shouldn't see are the 9 million emails and calls and late night calls and early morning calls, conversations, and all of the work that goes into creating these episodes. And everyone cares so much. Every department, every actor, every person cares so much. And we've all been in this business long enough to know that it's not always like that. And some people can just come to work and clock in and clock out, and that's also fine. But we somehow have assembled a group of people who that's not fine. And everyone gives so much of themselves to their role, whether it's an acting role or another role on the show. And I personally think you can feel that, and I think you can see it.
I definitely can. And I just want to say congratulations for another extraordinary season of The Handmaid's Tale. And I can't wait to see what comes next, even though I'm a little nervous. But thank you all so much. And thanks for spending this time with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.